Hey everyone, thank you all for joining me today. I am your boy, Corb J, and I appreciate you all being here today. I want to get right into this conversation because I think it's a good conversation to have, and I think it's important that most of my viewers and subscribers who are mostly Nigerians hear this. We are talking about the secret agenda to steal Afrobeat from Nigerians. And I want to deal with this today. And I want to talk about those things that most of you watching me may or may not be aware of. I think that for my day ones already know this. However, they don't know the man behind the curtain that are trying to do this. We've seen a few people used as agents. But we don't know the people behind the curtains that are using those people. So I'm going to deal with the secret agenda behind the attempt to steal Afrobeats, the success, the legacy from Nigerians, and why they're doing it. So let's get right into it. First, I want to start by saying that Afrobeat is a culture. The music genre Afrobeat is a culture, the Nigerian culture, which has primarily been the success of Afrobeat. It started with one man back in the 70s, Fela Kuti. It started with his vision of Afrobeat. And basically, that whole music genre was created with Nigerian culture, Nigerian sound, Nigerian music. Over the years, it's grown into what we know today as the modern Afrobeat, which I'm going to deal with today, has primarily been an hijacking of that culture. Okay, the modern Afrobeat with the S is a deliberate attempt to hijack the culture of Nigerians and deny Nigerians the success. So let's get right into this conversation because I'm going to be giving you quite a few things. I'm not going to stay too long on this video. Now, why and who is doing this? Who is trying to or attempting to hijack the success of Afrobeat from Nigerians? The answer is the Western culture. See, the West, over the years, have settled with the idea that when it comes to Black people as a whole, Black people cannot succeed or be successful without Western influence. Over the years, they've demonstrated this with other music genres, with other Black groups. When you look at African Americans, primarily in the United States, this particular group, their success hasn't really been achieved without white influence behind it. Same thing with hip hop. It is almost impossible for you to separate African American success without seeing white influence, men behind the curtain, really pushing that through. So white people have settled on this. The same thing with many other Black people in the United States that have achieved success. It hasn't come without white influence in it, whether it's a job, whether it's a business, whatever that is, has happened as a result of white people. You even find Black people, Black that say this. They will tell you that if you want to be successful, you have to have white people. You have comedians. Bernie Mac has made jokes about this. You have many African Americans have said this. It's an understanding that it's in the West, especially here in the United States, that unless you have white people as your friends, unless you have white people supporting you, you're not going to achieve success. And for a large part, that has been true in this country. Same with England, the British community over there. The same ideology. That many of the success at the hands of Black people have largely been the influence of white culture over it. Okay. And that's largely been the case. So white people and Europeans have settled on this. And sadly, a lot of black people have settled on this too. That if you're going to achieve success in any form, you're going to need white people. And white people know this, that if they're going to be successful, they don't need to have black people, but they just need to exploit black people. So that type of thing. Now here's where it is different. Afrobeat came to defile all of that. The success and the emergence of Afrobeat really put a damper on this, because Afrobeat, for the first time in modern era, now I won't say first time in history, first time in modern era, black enterprise or black invention or black business or black creativity was successful and became a phenomenon without Western influence. Afrobeat defiled all of that. See, before Afrobeat came into the West, it was huge. It was huge. As a matter of fact, the West is late in this whole thing. Before Afrobeat, the music genre created by Nigerians, whether it's Afrobeat without the S, it was created by Fela, or Afrobeats with the S, which I'm going to talk about why that is, why they created it with the S, which goes with what I'm talking about, which is the hijacking and the attempt to steal this. But before all of that, it was huge in the country of Nigeria as well as the continent of Africa. This was big. It was huge. It is the first time ever that white people did not have any influence in the success of a black enterprise. Same thing with Nollywood. Now, this is troublesome to the West. This is troublesome to the West. Because as I mentioned earlier on, the understanding is when it comes to black people, the only way black will succeed is if we have the Western white infused capital, white backing, white people support that before it becomes successful. And you can't point to any other thing that has really truly succeeded when it comes to black people without white influence. So you can't point to. If there's one, please let me know. You really can't, because their influence all over the world is so pronounced that it is almost a bullying, and it's almost a really dominant type of force that you almost cannot find a situation where you find black success, especially ones in the West, without Western influence, white people, except when it comes to Nigerians in Afrobeat. And so this is huge, because what that says is, in a nutshell, and why this is problematic to the West, which is why they have hijacked it the way they have, by putting an S to something that was perfect, Afrobeat, and utilizing one of our own to do it. DJ Abrantine, an individual who is a Ghanaian. Now, why Ghana? This video is not to smear Ghana, because Ghana is our people. Ghanaians are our people. This is not, because I'm going to talk about Ayo Shinayo very soon, who is a Nigerian. So this is not particularly to smear Ghanaians, because Ghanaians are our brothers and sisters. Now, when you look at the history of the West and how they have really infiltrated the world with a lot of their ideology, with a lot of their belief system, with a lot of their practice. For example, religion is a Western culture, Christianity. When you look at even capitalism, the money system, when you look at also the formation of business practices, LLC, S corp, a lot of these types of systems were put in by the West and really forced on others to adopt. Okay, so when you look at it from that sense, the West historically has always operated on a control type of system. We need to control everybody. We need to control things. We need to have our hands in things. Unless we have our hands in something, it's primitive. It is not up to standard. It is not up to par. So a lot of that thinking is a Western ideology, which is why Africa needs to be saved, which is why we need to go rescue them. Look at how starving they are. They don't have food. We need to send missionaries over there. We need to rescue these people. It's a lot of that mentality. It's the exact same mentality that also got them to colonize a country, or a continent, I should say, that was already perfect. They were doing well. They didn't need to be colonized. They didn't need the help of Western people. But it's that ideology of we need to go and save these people. And there's usually an agenda behind it. It's to really steal from a people to fuel their own lifestyle. That's usually the case of it. But let's get back into the Afrobeat and with the S thing. It says dangerous for Nigerians to have this case study of a black race or a group of people who have emerged and succeeded without Western influence. It is a dangerous message to send to the rest of the black race all over. It's essentially the same thing back in slavery, during the slave era, when you might have a slave who is considered to be a rebellious slave, or a slave who inspired his own people or her people. Those are usually cut down. Those slaves were dealt with. Those slaves were made example of. And the message behind that is we will not tolerate anyone that influence positively their own people, because that could raise and inspire a confidence that would give a people some type of new identity about themselves. It's a practice that occurred back in slavery, which is why a lot of those slaves were dealt with. They were defamed. They were dismembered. They were made example of. So when you have Nigerians in Nigeria who have produced a music genre like Afrobeat, and they did it in their own country, did it with their own sound, with their own equipment, they learned the craft, and they made it huge. When you have that type of phenomenon take place, based on the nature of the West towards black people all over the world, that is a problem. And so the infiltration began by seeking out one of our own. And so I would imagine the reason why they did this was they looked for a country that probably rivaled Nigeria, and Ghana, was a good one. And I should say this, that the rivalry that Ghana and Nigeria have had over the years has always been a friendly banter. It hasn't been one that we hated each other for. I mean, Ghana and Nigeria haven't gone to war against each other. They haven't. You haven't seen a mass killing of Ghanaians by Nigerians or Nigerians by Ghanaians. You haven't seen that over the years. So that banter and that's its competitive animosity, which is what I coined in one of my videos. It's just basically brothers just out trying to outcompete each other. But nonetheless, to an enemy is an opportunity to infiltrate that. So they find a Ghanaian, DJ Abrantine, who worked at a radio station owned by white Europeans, and say, hey, we love this music coming out of Nigeria, but God forbid we say Nigerian. Let's just say we love the music coming out of the continent of Africa. What should we call it? Right? The music already had a name. It's called Afrobeat. But no, Afrobeat will label it Nigeria. because everyone knows Afrobeat was started by Fela Kuti. Everyone knows this. This is a knowledge that everybody has. But let's not do that. Let's ascribe this to the whole continent, so we don't give the credit to one country. Because if we did that, that will inspire black people and will cause them to begin believing that they cannot succeed without white injection or white touch on it. So let's go ahead and just call it continental music. And DJ Abrantine, who I would imagine, again, I'll try to not to be hard on him. I'm not a fan, but like many others that have been used like this in the past, he had no idea the agenda behind this. He probably did not. He probably did not realize that he was being used to deny his countrymen, as well as his own people, the success and recognition of a music genre. So now let's disrespect the entire continent of Africa and disrespect people from South Africa, disrespect people from Kenya, let's disrespect people from Congo, let's disrespect people from Cameroon, people from Ghana, who have their own distinctive sound, who in their own right have their own culture, and they are proud of their own culture. Let's disrespect them and their music, whatever comes out of that music, and let's just call all their music Afrobeats with an S. Now, interesting enough, and let me tell you what the damage of that, because I recently met an African American girl, and I remember having a conversation with her, and she was talking about this artist that she loves from Cameroon, and I said, well, that artist, I know that artist, but that artist is, and she called the song, she like, I love Afrobeats. And she loved this artist from Cameroon. And I had to correct her that is not Afrobeat, that is Makossa. And she was like, what do you mean? What do you mean it's Afrobeat? She's arguing with me. And I said, no, it's not. Right? I said, because you wouldn't want, what if I said Jay-Z's music is actually salsa music? It's from, Latin America. What if I said Beyonce's music is not hip hop? And I ascribe that to merengue. She's like, no, but you can't do that. I say, exactly. That's exactly why you can't do that. You can't take a music of one particular country and ascribe it to an entire continent and say, oh, it doesn't matter where they come from in that continent. The music is Afrobeats. It's not. And she's like, wow, I didn't realize that. I said, yeah, but it's not your fault, because that's what has been marketed. Because God forbid Nigerians are given the credit for this. And then you have a gentleman like Dyer, who is actually a Nigerian, who, by the way, was against the whole Afrobeats with the S. Dyer really hated Afrobeat with the S. You should go research that. He didn't like that. He rejected it. But all of a sudden, he's accepting this. And he's creating documentaries, which he released last year, called Afrobeat The Backstory, which I've since done videos about. And he further perpetuates this narrative that Afrobeat is not a Nigerian music, it's an African music. And he further gets used by the Western system to deny his own people the legacy of Afrobeats. See, you could always find one or two ignorant people within a culture to go against or to betray their own people. Now, what is the danger of this? The danger of this is that when it comes to Africa, especially Nigerians have primarily been labeled as scammers, have primarily been labeled as a negative thing, which is very bizarre, because when you think of Nigerians and the impact Nigerians are making or have outside of the continent, it has been nothing but positive, Most Nigerians are engineers. Most Nigerians are doctors with their own practice. Most Nigerians are business owners, restaurant owners, grocery store owners. Most Nigerians are highly educated. But for some reason, when people think of Nigerians, they think of the 0.0001 narrative that is pushed primarily by the West against these amazing people whose representation in the West is less than 1%, at least the one in the United States. The representation of Nigerians in this country is less than 1%, 0.2% of Nigerians in this country. And these are the same ones that are creating the phenomenon and the ones that are dominating in mostly every sector of the industry, whether it's science, whether it's art, whether it's in business sector, whether it's in government, whatever, you would find Nigerians in there. But then the narrative of these same people is that they're scammers. So think about it for a second. If that was true, that Nigerians are scammers, ask yourself this question, then why is it that the United States government hasn't banned Nigerians permanently from coming to this country? If Nigerians are such a problematic group of people that are scammers, that they just want to scam all Western people and all of that, how is it that every year Nigerians are bus loaded into this country more than any other country from Africa? How is it that England has a program where they go and get, because that's the same thing you hear over there too, they go and get these Nigerians to become doctors and they become programs. They steal the best of these so-called scammers. And that is a question intelligent people will ask themselves. How is it possible that if these people are these problematic, if they are exactly the label that most people have come to identify them with, which has been at the hands of white media to label them as such, because Nigerians historically are formidable and an amazing set of people. How is it that these same people are allowed to come to this country? Because you can certainly ban them. You can ban Nigerians, just like President Trump did. You can just keep that ban on and just prevent them from coming here. You can certainly halt the visa program for Nigerians and not have them here. But no, Nigerians are encouraged to come here. Nigerians are bused to come here. Bus loads of them are brought here because the West realize and they understand that of all the African countries, Nigerians are the best of the African countries. So let's talk about that for a second. Nigerians speak English because they were colonized by the British. It's a value. Nigerians are a young workforce, vibrant workforce, whose education in Nigeria mirrors that of England. So they're highly educated. That's another one. They're so hardworking that even historically, most of the slaves that were brought in this country, most African Americans' ancestry or Nigerian ancestry, came from Nigeria because of their hard work and their attitude towards working. That's the value. And then when they come here, they're so proud people that when they were in their land, that was the same character, that's the same behavior they exuded, is wanting to be the best in themselves no matter what. So when they come up here, they naturally exemplify that same behavior. That is the value. Here's the problem though, is that these same people back in Nigeria, and these are the same ones who have always naturally and historically rebelled against Western ideology. Nigerians have. Same reason why Nigerians historically, the slaves that drowned themselves and threw themselves out of the ship, of the slave ship, and drowned themselves and say, I will rather die than be slaves in another foreign man's land, especially these white foreigners. It's not coincidental that these same people were Nigerians that did that historically. It isn't also coincidental that of all the African countries that were colonized Nigerians, even while a lot of African countries today have the practices of slave and they have the mentality, Nigerians historically have rejected Western ideology. Now, would you find a lot of some of the system of that in Nigeria? Yes, you'll find that. But as a people, they don't buy into that. Now, you'll find a few that would. Naturally, you'll find it. But as a collective, the people have truly remained true to their own culture, to their own self, to their own craft, to their own tribe, to their own upbringing, to what they've known for thousands of years from a people. The Nigerians are not the only one. You have people from Ethiopia that have the same behavior. You have people from Congo that have the same behavior. You have people from Zimbabwe that have the same behavior. You have a lot of that type of behavior from these people. Now, the difference between these people is that Nigeria, of all of these other countries, is the only one country of these countries that I mentioned, plus many, who reject Western ideology and have paid a price, by the way. Because they rejected Western ideology, they paid a price by either getting sanctioned or denied aid that have caused the countries to deteriorate. Nigeria is the only one who, even with all of that, have emerged. That is an inspiration that cannot be adopted by most black people. They can't have that. So you'll find a lot of resulting of the demonization of these people by the West. You find a lot of that rather than focus on the 99% of Nigerians who are doing great things in the West. They will focus on the 0.001. I met another African American lady who I would say was not a pleasure meeting this one. And a lot of her ideology against Nigeria is one most of us have come to know, is the focusing of that 0.001. And you'll find a lot of that type of negative narrative unfortunately, from our brothers and sisters who are African American. So I met her, we were having a conversation. And she talks about how she's met a lot of Nigerians who are highly educated, and she talks about that. I'm like, yeah, I appreciate that. They're doctors and all of that. But she couldn't resist talking about this one Nigerian she met. And she went on and on about this one Nigerian that she met that didn't live up to the standard, and he did something that was, and she used the word like scammed her and all of that, which of course I didn't know. I don't know the guy, I don't know the story, and from her credibility, I can tell that was all a fabrication. But nonetheless, she wanted to go on and on about his story. And then I asked her, I said, hold on a second. Let me ask you. You just said out of your mouth that most Nigerians that you've met are doctors, engineers, business owners, successful and all of that. But you couldn't help this one to go on and on about this one story. The one story of all the ones you've mentioned. You didn't brag about these other ones. You just bragged about this one, and she couldn't shut up about it. Right? So that is the thinking that you have in the West, is let's use the 0.001, which everyone in their community has someone who doesn't represent the communities at best. Every community has this. You will find these type of people that don't represent their own people in the best light in every community. But how is it that when it comes to Nigerians, the media and the West pushes this narrative of the 0.001 as scammer and has been bought, and that narrative has been bought by a lot of people, mostly black people, who now look at themselves and look at Nigerians as such. Why is that? It's because Nigerians, again, are the only black people that found in the modern time now. We're not talking about back in the days, because back in the days, Africa ruled. But in the modern era, they found the ideology that Western people have come to know, which is that black people cannot succeed unless there's an injection of white or the presence of white people over it. Nigerians are the only ones that have defiled this. Created Afrobeats, Nollywood. These two things, giants entertainment, don't have Western influence. So they can't have that. Because it's a story that should inspire blacks all over the world. Like African Americans in this country, British Americans in England, and all over the world. But they can't have that. So they have to beat it down. Now, here's what my advice to Nigerians, and I will close. Don't be used as a surrogate against your own. Because your children's lives and your culture depends on it. If you're looking for respect, you're going to, as a collective, say no to a temporary success. Because that's usually what is used. They find one of us to make a house Negro and leave the other ones in the field. To use the house Negro as a way to spite the ones in the field. So the ones in the field are thinking, oh, wow, that's what I can get if I'm close to massa. Don't be used as a surrogate against your own people just so you can have a piece of the bread, because that bread ain't going to last longer. You're the only one that's going to have that. Your children ain't going to have that. Your children's children ain't going to have that piece of bread, because you're just going to eat it by yourself, and that's it. Because whatever you think you're getting out of the deal isn't going to trickle down to your own generation. Forget the rest of your own people. Your generation isn't going to get the effect of it. And so we as a people will need to stand up. We need to understand the chess moves. And I've talked about this on most of my videos. You need to understand that when it comes to your legacy, when it comes to your craft and creativity, you will need to protect it. Because just like hip hop was hijacked and hip hop was stolen, and when you look at the history of hip hop, most of the consumers of hip hop were white people. The record labels were white owned. That's not the same with Afrobeat. Most of the consumers of Afrobeat are Africans. The record labels for Afrobeat are owned by Africans, Nigerians. That is a narrative that is dangerous for the thinking of the Western culture, because that is something that inspires. It's something that my own children are going to be inspired by that. They can't have that. They can't have your children inspired to know that they can do and create things by their own selves, within their own group, and have their own people support it and become a phenomenon. That is a message that they can't. So they have to hijack this thing called Afrobeat. So don't be a part of it. Don't be used to make this, because if you are one that's used to do this, history will remember that. History will remember your name, and you can't hide it. And I would rather be on the side of history, where my children and my grandkids can see that I was part of the group of people, or the body of people of Africa that try to preserve that which we created. There's nothing wrong with sharing with the world. It's a beautiful thing. Let people in the West enjoy our music. It's all good. We want them to enjoy it, but you can't hijack it as your own. That is the crime. You can't attempt to steal it from other people by denying a people the credit of it. So just so you don't want to inspire, or just so you don't want that people to feel energetic, feel very confident in themselves, just because you don't want that. That is a crime. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up. Leave me a comment. Subscribe to the channel. And I will see you all.
Det finns ingen annan där som kan stå här by my side, oh why. Sättet du rör på det får mig att dö för dig, baby. För de här yardis, de vill ju bara dra ner oss. Men du är fett och vanlig. På det jag lägger av min tid, jag vill ha dig. Du får mig känna safety. Jag kan nog leda, baby. Och jag kommer aldrig ändra mig. Aldrig. känna så här för någon annan än dig. Aldrig, aldrig, aldrig kommer aldrig känna så här för någon annan än dig. Varje gång jag bak på dig, jag tänker åh vilket kap jag har gjort. Jag skulle gå tillbaks i tid, göra om allt igen och förstå. Ser det som ett allt, det är dig jag vill wifa. De här yardis, de vill ju bara dra ner oss. Men du är fett och vanlig. På det jag lägger all min tid. Jag vill ha det. Du får mig känna safety. Jag kan nog ner det baby. Och jag kommer aldrig ändra mig. Aldrig, aldrig, aldrig kommer aldrig känna så här för någon annan än dig. Aldrig, aldrig, aldrig kommer aldrig känna så här.